Ever wish you could manage a huge project, like it was nothing? Just
Yeah.
as easily a small one, you know? Or lead a team to victory when it seems like everything's against you.
It's almost like there's a secret sauce to success, right?
Exactly. And guess what? We might just have found that secret sauce. Today, we're diving deep into the strategies of Sun Tzu,
Ah, Sun Tzu, the legendary Chinese general.
the one and only. We'll be exploring excerpts from Sun Tzu. It's a modern analysis of his masterpiece, The Art of War.
Fascinating. And which part are we focusing on today?
We're unlocking the secrets of the military situation chapter. It's all about how to shape circumstances to your advantage, not just reacting, but actually taking control.
That's powerful stuff. And how does this ancient wisdom apply to our modern lives?
Get this, it's surprisingly relevant, whether you're leading a team at work, negotiating a tough deal, or even just trying to win at life. This analysis breaks it all down.
I'm intrigued already. So where do we begin?
Right off the bat, Sun Tzu hits us with this idea of organization and communication.
Ah, the foundations of any successful endeavor.
It's like he's giving us a masterclass in Project Management 101, but from centuries ago. He calls them form and name, basically visual cues and auditory signals.
So like using flags to direct troops or drum beats to coordinate action. Brilliant.
Exactly. It's all about having a system in place for clear communication, no matter how complex things get, just like how we use emails and project management software today to keep everyone on the same page.
Absolutely. It's about establishing a shared understanding and inspiring coordinated action.
It reminds me of that story about Han Xin, the brilliant general. He claimed he could command any number of troops effectively.
Oh, yes, Han Jin, a truly remarkable strategist. Didn't Emperor Liu Bang doubt his abilities at first?
He did. But Han Xin's response was brilliant. He said Liu Bang's strength wasn't in commanding troops directly, but in commanding generals, leaders like himself, who could then manage those large forces.
Delegation at its finest. Recognizing your own strengths and leveraging the strengths of others.
Such a valuable lesson for leaders in any field, wouldn't you say? You don't have to do everything yourself. Building a strong team is key.
Couldn't agree more. But Sun Tzu doesn't stop at organization and communication. He goes a step further, with this concept of utilizing the situation.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Instead of blaming others when things go wrong, a true leader takes a step back and asks, how could I have set things up differently for a better outcome?
It's about taking ownership, shaping the circumstances to your advantage.
Like a chess player, thinking several moves ahead. Sun Tzu uses the analogy of a skilled archer.
Go on, tell me more.
He says a truly skilled archer doesn't just rely on hitting the target. They consider everything, the wind, the terrain, maximizing their chances of success. It's about setting yourself up for success, not just relying on raw talent.
Proactive rather than reactive. I like it.
And this brings us back to Han Xin. He was a master of utilizing the situation. The Battle of Jing is a perfect example. Facing a larger enemy force, he didn't charge in head first. He created a situation where his smaller force had the advantage.
Didn't he strategically channel his troops toward the enemy, almost like creating a canal that led them to victory?
Precisely. It's a powerful reminder that we don't always have to meet force with force. A clever strategy can be far more effective. Sometimes, the most effective solutions are the ones that nobody else sees.
Out-of-the-box thinking, you could say. Finding that unconventional path to success.
It's like finding that hidden canal that gives you the edge, even when the odds are stacked against you. It's funny, isn't it? This utilizing the situation thing, it's not just about strategy, right? It's like a whole new way of thinking.
It is, isn't it? Shifting from reacting to things to actually being in control. Creating your own circumstances.
Exactly. It's like we're not just characters in a story anymore, we're the authors.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? Like, how do we take those theoretical ideas and put them into practice in our lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Well, luckily for us, a later military strategist, Li Jing, built on Sun Tzu's work.
Okay, Li Jing, another brilliant mind. What did he bring to the table?
He outlined 3 types of advantageous situations we can create. Momentum, terrain advantage, and taking advantage of circumstances. And I think these are super helpful for applying these ideas to our modern world, I mean.
Okay, momentum, terrain advantage, and taking advantage of circumstances. Sounds intriguing. Let's break them down. First up, momentum. What exactly is it? It's not just about being super excited and pumped up.
Right. It's more than just hype. It's about projecting strength and competence. Even when you might not feel totally confident on the inside, you know what I mean. Li Jing said momentum has a force as vast as mountains and rivers, and that can really influence how other people see you.
I see. So it's like this aura, almost, this energy you project.
Exactly. So let's say you're going into a job interview, for example, right? Even if you're nervous, you can project that kind of momentum.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do I project that confidence? Especially if I'm feeling anything but confident.
Preparation is key. Knowing everything about the company, the role, even the people who are going to interview you.
So the more I know, the more confident I'll seem.
It's like having all your talking points ready, knowing what questions they might ask, and even having some good questions of your own to ask them.
I can see how that would help. Being prepared takes away some of the anxiety, for sure. You're not just winging it.
Exactly. And that confidence can be contagious. When you believe in yourself, others are more likely to believe in you too.
It's funny, it makes me think of that story about Napoleon. He somehow convinced a much larger Austrian army to surrender, and they had more troops.
It's the power of momentum. Sometimes perception is everything. If you can convince your opponent or even yourself that you're in control, you've already won half the battle.
Wow. Powerful stuff. So momentum is all about projecting that confidence, that air of strength.
Yeah, got it. Now, what about terrain advantage? I feel like this one's a bit more straightforward, using the physical environment to your advantage, right? Like high ground and stuff.
You got it. But Li Jing actually takes it deeper than that. He uses some pretty vivid imagery, like narrow passes, sheep's intestines, and dog's doors.
Sheep's intestines. Okay, now I'm really curious.
He's basically saying that even a seemingly insignificant location can be super important. It's about finding those strategic points that give you an edge, even if you don't have overwhelming strength.
Yeah, I get it. So how does this translate to our lives today? We're not exactly fighting on mountain passes anymore.
Think about it this way. Your skills, your knowledge, your network, these are all like your terrain.
It's like our personal landscape.
Exactly. So are you the go-to person at your company for a certain type of project? Do you have a unique skill that nobody else has? That's your terrain advantage, your narrow pass, so to speak. So it's about figuring out where I excel and owning that space, making myself the expert.
Exactly. Let people know how you can contribute. Make yourself indispensable. That's your terrain advantage. It's a powerful thing, especially for your career in the long run.
It makes me think of Zhu Liang, the super smart strategist from Romance of the Three Kingdoms. He lost a strategic location in a battle, and it basically caused his downfall.
That's a perfect example. Losing your terrain advantage can really mess things up.
So the takeaway is build your terrain, whether it's through skills, network, expertise, and then protect it. Don't let anyone take it from you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It can be tough to get back once you lose it.
Okay, makes sense. So we've covered momentum and terrain advantage. What about the third one, taking advantage of circumstances?
This one's all about being opportunistic, but also prepared. Li Jing talks about striking when the enemy is slack, tired, hungry, or disorganized. Taking advantage of those moments of weakness.
So it's about seizing the moment,
Yep.
but also being ready for that moment, right?
You got it. And you know what? We have a perfect example of this. Cao Cao, the brilliant strategist from the Three Kingdoms period.
Oh, yeah. I love the stories about Cao Cao. What did he do?
He left a small force to defend the city of Hefei, knowing that the enemy, Sun Quan, was probably going to attack.
He sounds like he was always a few steps ahead.
He was. He left sealed instructions for his generals, but only one of them, Zhang Liao, really understood his plan.
Intriguing. What was the plan?
He knew they couldn't just sit around waiting for Sun Quan's whole army to arrive. They had to disrupt him, break his momentum before he could fully gather his forces.
I'm on the edge of my seat here. What happened?
They launched a surprise attack. While Sun Quan's forces were still arriving, totally caught them off guard. And it worked. The Wu army was defeated. It's like anticipating your opponent's moves, turning their strengths into weaknesses.
Wow, that's incredible. Talk about taking advantage of circumstances.
Cao Cao called the strategy utilizing the natural situation. I love that phrase. It's like setting things up so events naturally work in your favor.
Like setting up a chain reaction, a domino effect. I like that.
And we can apply this to so many things, like project management, right? Anticipating problems and having a plan B.
It's all about being proactive, thinking ahead, and being ready to adapt, right?
Huh?
Life throws curveballs, and we got to be ready to swing.
You got it. All right, before we move on, let's circle back to Sun Tzu's analogy. Remember the one about people being like logs and stones?
Oh, yeah. That was a good one. But a bit strange, if I'm honest.
Well, he's basically saying that people react to the situations they're in, just like a log rolling down a hill will follow the path of least resistance.
Interesting. So if we understand this utilizing the situation thing, we can predict how people will react, right? Even in chaotic situations.
Precisely. And Sun Tzu has another fascinating example, leaving an escape route during a siege.
Wait, what? Why would you do that? Wouldn't you want to trap the enemy completely?
It seems counterintuitive, right? But Sun Tzu says leaving an escape route can actually lead to a bigger win. Because when people feel completely trapped, they fight like cornered animals. But if they see a way out, a glimmer of hope, they might just take it. And that's when you can really exploit their desperation.
It's like giving them a false sense of control.
You got it. They think they're making a choice, but you've already anticipated their move. It's a brilliant example of using human psychology to your advantage. It's like setting up a trap, but making it look like an open door.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. We've covered so much today, all these amazing strategies. But how can our listeners actually start using them? In their everyday lives, I mean. It all sounds great in theory, but how do we put it into action?
That's the big question, isn't it? And that's exactly what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so we've been talking about these awesome strategies. Momentum, terrain advantage, and taking advantage of circumstances. They sound epic on the battlefield, but how can we use them in our normal lives?
Well, that's the cool part. These aren't just old war stories. They're actually super useful tools you can use to level up your career, relationships, you name it.
Really? I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Let's start with momentum. What can someone listening to this do to, actually use it?
Remember, momentum's all about projecting competence and strength, right? So let's say you're about to go into a big meeting or a job interview, even a first date. Preparation is key.
So no winging it.
No way. Think about what you want to achieve and then do your research. Practice your presentation, come up with some conversation starters, anything that'll boost your confidence.
It's like that saying, chance favors the prepared mind.
Yeah,
You're setting yourself up for success before you even start.
exactly. When you're prepared, you're less likely to freeze up and you can really focus on your strengths.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Okay, how about terrain advantage? How do we find our narrow passes in the real world?
It's about figuring out what you're uniquely good at. What makes you stand out? What do you know that other people don't? What skills or knowledge make you indispensable?
So it's more about specializing than being good at a bunch of different things.
Yeah. It's about becoming a master of your domain. Once you've found your terrain, you can really start to build on it. Take some courses, network with the right people, showcase your work, really solidify your position as the expert.
It's like building your own fortress of expertise.
Exactly. But remember, terrain can change. Things evolve, new trends pop up, so stay flexible and be willing to learn new things. That's how you stay ahead of the game.
Okay, that makes sense. Now for the third one. Taking advantage of circumstances. This one feels a bit like riding a wave. You got to wait for the perfect moment and then go for it.
Love that analogy. You're spot on. It's about being aware of what's happening around you, spotting opportunities, and then having the guts to actually go for it.
Okay, so how do we even learn to spot those opportunities? It's not like they have big flashing signs, right?
It starts with being curious. Stay up to date with your field, notice the trends, talk to people, and be open to new ideas. You never know where that next big break will come from.
So being in the right place at the right time is a part of it, but you also need to be ready to actually take action when you see that opportunity. Like Cao Cao's general, Zhang Liao, who launched that surprise attack.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes you got to be brave and take a chance. Don't let fear hold you back. Step out of your comfort zone.
Okay, I like that. Now, as we've been talking, something's been on my mind. It's that analogy of people being like logs and stones. It's a cool visual, but it also makes me wonder, is there a line between like influencing situations and actually manipulating people?
That's a super important question. I think it all boils down to your intentions. Are you trying to create situations where everyone wins? Or are you just trying to get ahead, even if it means stepping on others?
So it's about using these strategies for good, not just for personal gain. Like a good leader who motivates and inspires their team instead of just barking orders.
Right. It's about empowerment, not manipulation, giving you the tools to shape your own path and reach your goals, but in a way that lifts others up too.
That's a great point. This whole deep dive has been incredible. We've learned so much from these ancient strategies. I think the big takeaway is that we can all be more proactive and strategic in every part of our lives.
I agree. And the amazing thing is that these principles are timeless. You can apply them to any situation, big or small.
So to everyone listening, remember this. You have more power than you think. Don't be afraid to experiment, to take risks, to write your own story. Sun Tzu was right. The greatest victories are often won before the battle even begins.